Okay, so for 5-1, Introduction to Topic 5, is midpoint and distance in the coordinate plane. So we've talked about midpoint when it's just like on a number line way back in 1-2 when we said we could find the midpoint by just adding two numbers and dividing by 2. Well, when both of our points are on the coordinate plane and they each have their own x coordinate and y coordinate, it becomes a little bit more difficult, but it's still the same premise. You add your x's together and divide by 2. That'll give you your x coordinate. You add your y's together, divide by 2. That'll give you your y coordinate. It doesn't matter which one is x1 or x2 or y1 or y2. That's why I like to just say add your x's together, divide by 2. Add your y's together, divide by 2. Remember, your answer is going to look like a coordinate point. It's going to look like x comma y because it is a coordinate point that we can plot, and it should be exactly between A and B as our midpoint, which means this side is equal to this side. So that's something to keep in mind, okay? So that's how we do the midpoint formula. Next up is the distance formula. It's a little bit more complicated, but this does use something we're going to be learning later on called the Pythagorean theorem, and that's what the distance formula is derived from. And so what we can see here is we know A is at x1, y1, and B is at x2, y2. And so this distance right here is from x2 minus x1. So it's from the spot where B is at minus y is this distance. And then this distance is from where B is at minus where A is at on the y side is this distance. So we take those, we square them, add them together, and take the square root, and that is our distance. We will see this again when we get to the Pythagorean theorem, but for now, all you have to do is know how to plug these numbers into this formula. You don't even have to worry about this part. If you're just given an A coordinate and a B coordinate, you plug them in here. Remember, it doesn't matter which one you start off with as long as you stay consistent. So if I start off with the B coordinate first, I have to stay consistent. If I wanted to switch and do the Y coordinate first, that'd be fine as long as I did the Y coordinate first in both situations. Or sorry, the A coordinate first, not the Y. So please keep that in mind. Other than that, just like with all formulas, everything in black stays the same. You're going to have to write the minus each time. You're going to have to write the parentheses squared each time, okay? And the way we do this in the calculator, you have to do each part individually. We don't have those fancy TI Inspires in pre-advanced geometry where you can just type this all in for you. You have to actually use your brain when you're typing this into the calculator, and you have to do it part by part in order to do that. So I'm going to show you an example right now. First of the midpoint formula. The midpoint one is really easy. We have an x and a y coordinate and an x and a y coordinate. So I add my two x's together. 7 plus 2 is 9. Divide by 2, 4.5. So that's going to be my x coordinate of my midpoint. And then for y's, I add my two y's together. 5 plus negative 4. Well, that's only 1. Divided by 2 is 0.5. That's going to be where my midpoint is. 4.5 up 0.1. So that's where we can find our midpoint at. That's the point that makes equal distance from here to here. And we could double check that if we wanted to, but we do not have to. So that's how we do that. Next up is distance, okay? Sorry, up here. Distance. So we have two coordinates, u and v, and to find the distance between those two coordinates, we use the distance formula. You don't have to memorize the distance formula. It's on the posters page, which means there's a poster of it in my classroom, which means you can use the poster on the test. So we take the formula and we just plug it in. Remember, it doesn't matter which one we make x1, y1, but we plug it in and we do x minus x. So we did 4 minus negative 7, which turned to 4 plus 7. And then y minus y, negative 3 minus 5. And we got negative 8. So this is how we would do it using like our phone calculator or something like that. We do 4 plus 7 is 11. Negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. Then we square that. 11 squared is 121. Negative 8 squared is 64. Add those together, it's 185. And then we take the square root. Now, if you're wondering on your phone calculator where the square root button is, I will show that to you. So on our phone calculator, if we turn it sideways, okay, we could have done all of that in our heads if we wanted to. 11 squared is 121, 8 squared, 64. But for the square root, we would do 185. We'd type the number, and then we'd hit square root. So this is square root right here. That's a square root. And then we get our number. So we would say this is approximately, so with the little squiggly line, 13.6 units. This doesn't, so we were just saying units. And it says round to the nearest tenth. So we always round to whatever it says to round to. There's no always round to this. It's whatever it says, okay? And if it doesn't say anything, you decide what to round to. But I usually go with at least one decimal point after, so the 10th place. So that's how we use that on the phone calculator. That's totally fine. For the calculators in class, there's a square root button on there as well. It's quite simple to do. And then this is a little introduction into our road trip project, which we'll be doing during this unit as well. But the problems for this unit are quite simple. You're just finding the midpoint, distance, that type of thing. Same thing on Math Excel, or if you want to do the worksheet. One thing I do want to state is sometimes they ask you for they give you the midpoint. I'm just going to do an example of that. They give you a midpoint. So I'm going to make up numbers here. I'm going to have 1, 2 is point A. And then instead of giving you point B, they give you what the midpoint is. And they say the midpoint is at 3, 4. Okay? So then we're supposed to find point B. So the really interesting thing about doing this here is all we have to do is we know the midpoint formula for the x-coordinate is 1 plus, we don't know this one, so let's call this one x and y, okay? 1 plus x divided by 2, we know that equals 3, right? 1 plus x divided by 2 equals 3. We add our x's together, divide by 2, that gives our midpoint. And the same thing with the y's. 2 plus y divided by 2 must equal 4. We add our y's together, divide by 2, it must equal our midpoint. Okay, so we're actually trying to find this. So this is really easy to solve. We just multiply both sides by 2. So then we have 1 plus x equals 6. Then x must equal 5. And then we do the same thing over here. Multiply by 2. We have 2 plus y equals 8. So y must equal 6. Okay, so then our b coordinate would actually be 5, 6. And that would show us how to find the other coordinate given the first coordinate and the midpoint. So that's how we would do that type of problem. I wanted to make sure we understood that as well, because that's on this worksheet. I don't really mind which option you guys do to complete this one, but I did want to show you an example if you were going to do the worksheet. So that is what 5-1 midpoint and distance in the coordinate plane is all about.